financial wealth is really only there to support the other 4 types of wealth. So you can be rich in some types and poor in others. Even with $1 million net worth, you could be poor in the other 4 types.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Today on the podcast, we're talking about Sahil Bloom's new book, The 5 Types of Wealth. Lots of interesting concepts I took out of this book, Jamie. I just finished it. I actually set a goal for last year and this year to not read any more money and investing books. I feel like I've filled up my cup in that area of my life, and I want to read some other books. Like, for instance, right now I'm reading a book about Ben Franklin, which is actually really fascinating. But this book snuck through the 5 types of wealth. It violated my no new money books rule. But it's really not a money book, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. It introduces the concept of, besides just financial wealth, which we're all very familiar with, especially if you're listening to this podcast or you have any connection to the FIRE community or to just understanding what your net worth is. We're all very familiar with kind of that financial monetary scoreboard. But Sahil Bloom introduces 4 other types of wealth, which I really enjoyed that concept of kind of grading your life separate from just what you have in the bank account, so to speak.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book as well, Spencer, because it spoke to the optimizer in me. And I think a lot of our audience has that tendency as well, where they're either a beginner or they're a total nerd with their money, and helping us remember that there's more to life than just your financial wealth. And if you have a net worth of $10 million, but you never get to enjoy it, you don't have any friends, you don't have any family there with you at the end. Kind of like when you go to those sad retirement ceremonies and it's just the member retiring after 27 years or 20 years and no family. Stuff like that is sad because people misprioritize certain aspects of their life. And so books like this are really helpful for military service members to remember that your physical wealth is important, your social wealth is important, your mental wealth is important, your financial wealth is important, and I forget the 5th.
Well, let's just go over that real quick, Jamie. So the 5 types of wealth that he talks about are time, social, mental, physical, and financial. So we'll break those down and define those. So the time wealth is the freedom to choose how you spend your time, whom you spend it with, where to spend it, and when to trade it for something else. This is a concept that Morgan Housel talks about. The ultimate form of wealth is choosing who you spend your time with, where you spend it, when you spend it, how long you spend it for.
Yeah, I think in this book, he quotes about time wealth is what can you do on a random Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. So maybe taking your son to play baseball or something like that. So a lot of people fall victim to the aggressive, have to progress, have to build more company, have to do another startup, have to work full time forever and all these things. But really, time wealth can be defined as, are you able to go to that program at your kid's school? Do you have the freedom in your life to have the flexibility to go to the Christmas program, go to the parents' day, the donuts with dad, the mother-daughter dance, all those things that sometimes we have to give up in a military family?
Social wealth is the connection to others in your personal and professional world. So the breadth and depth of the connection to those around you is the network you can rely on for love and friendship, but also in times of need. Mental wealth is the connection to a higher order purpose and meaning that provides motivation and guides your short and long-term decision-making. Physical wealth is health, fitness, and vitality. And then financial wealth is just net worth, essentially, but he also breaks down to income generation, expense management, and long-term investment. So for military service members, it's really interesting because a lot of military service members probably don't feel like they have a lot of financial wealth. They might have a negative net worth or a $0 net worth. They might have a lot of debt. And that might be true. You might have a pretty low financial wealth, but you might be rich in other areas. So I think in the mental wealth area, where you have connection to a higher order purpose and meaning that provides motivation and guides your short and long-term decision-making, a lot of military service members have a huge net worth, let's say, in that category, because that's one thing that the U.S. military is very good about doing for a lot of people, is providing that purpose and meaning and answering that question of like, well, why do you go to work every day? It's like, well, for the guy and gal next, who goes to work next to me. And that feeds into social wealth as well, where you have professional and personal connections. Like for most military service members, you come into the military at a very young time in your life. If you're enlisting, you might be enlisting right out of high school or very early in your 20s. And same thing for a lot of officers. Usually they're joining the military after graduating university or service academy or going to OCS early in their adulthood. And a lot of times some of the best friends that you'll make your entire life are forged during your military service. And so you could be extremely wealthy in social wealth and in mental wealth and possibly even physical wealth too. All the branches have some form of physical training requirement and physical training tests that you have to pass every year. And that's just not true for civilian jobs.
At the beginning of the book, Spencer, I want to reflect on the quiz that he does. And there's an assessment on his website as well. And you and I compared our results on the framework for how we rated ourselves on each of the 5 types of wealth. Well, I'll hold my observation on your results and my results in a second. Do you have any specific observations about where you currently are on your 5 types of wealth and how you scored on that being out of the military for a couple of years compared to maybe where you would have rated it while you were on active duty, and any reflections on how you've improved since separating?
I think the area where I find that I have a lot of wealth now is time wealth, but also the life of a pilot Air Force officer was pretty cushy sometimes in terms of deciding when I'm going to the gym or what I'm doing on the weekends. But I guess you can look at it the other side too, that there's not many other jobs that are going to tell you with very little notice, hey, you're going out on a trip for the next 2 weeks.
No control.
Pack your bags. Yeah. So I would say time wealth is probably improved since I left the military. But I would say mental wealth is one of the things that I really struggled with after leaving the military. The military provides very easy, very push button purpose and meaning. It just does. It's hard. Doug Norman calls it the fog of work, but really it's just it's literally they're issuing you purpose and meaning every day that you go to work. It's easy to just have those existential questions when you're showing up for your 7 to 3 or 7 to 4 job every day.
Yeah. And also with the military job, you have the social wealth built into it. And I think that's, from an outsider's perspective, at least for someone that's still in, I still have a little bit of that, although I'm looking forward to getting back into an actual squadron instead of a headquarters building. Whereas as a veteran now, the social wealth is a little harder. You have to be more deliberate to maintain that. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's probably the most, looking at the list here, that's probably where I became most impoverished after leaving the service. Was you just lose all those super easy connections. I mean, that's the other thing about coming in as a young enlisted or a young officer is you go into your military unit and usually it's 100 to 150 people approximately your age who are also motivated to serve their country and do cool things. And it's just so easy to make friends. And even though we're moving every 2 to 3 years, I mean, I remember every single time I got to a unit, within, 48, 72 hours of being there, you're invited out for a lunch, or you're invited, for drinks on the weekend, or there's some activity coming up and they're like, hey, do you want to join us and do this? It really is just so easy to meet people who are into the same things that you're into and just have that and develop a lot of those loose relationships, but then eventually very quickly develop into very deep relationships. And I mean, we saw that, with you and me, Jamie, where, we met in New Jersey at McGuire on our assignments there. And I would say that when we left, we weren't close friends, but we knew who each other were. And then when it came back around to Hawaii and you saw my name in the list and you said, hey, I know that guy, I'll pick him up from the airport. And boom, right there, it just launched, this great friendship that we've had now for the last couple of years. So that's one thing that you probably don't realize it too when you're in the service, just how wealthy you are in the social category. Until you get out, you become a veteran and then you're like, wait a minute, where is everybody? What are we meant to do now? How do I meant to meet people?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think on my side of it now, where to be a little bit vulnerable. The physical side is where I've been struggling over the last couple of months. Busy work season. I have a tendency that I can easily fall back into a rut of poor nutrition and poor workout routine when life gets busy, emotional eating and whatnot. So it just can easily degrade progress. And then I know that affects not just my physical, but then my mental and social stuff as well. So, and then when you get PCS orders, it's like, well, I'm leaving in a couple months. So there's no point in making friends now. So on a quick 2-year tour, I feel like that's something I maybe struggled to do a little bit on this tour, is really dive into those deep friendships. And we'll talk more about social wealth in a second. But, I think I'm doing good on financial, doing good on mental, doing good on time as much as my job allows. I find time to go to the gym, find time to meet my family for lunch, find time to check out as soon as the horn rings or whatever, what they used to do at the bell at the assembly line plant. Like, I don't know, 4:30 goes off and I'm out some days. Other days I got to work late. But yeah, so everyone's going to have different things. I think just taking a quick inventory of where you're at is helpful to understand as you look through these. There's a lot of tips and tools in the book, and understanding which one maybe you're a little more struggling with right now is always a great starting point.
And the book provides the framework that if there's an area where it breaks, the 5 types of wealth into 5 different sections. And so if there's a particular area where after you take this quiz, you're very weak on, you can just jump straight to that area. I just read through the whole book cover to cover, and I skipped some of there's a bit in the health section that I'm very familiar with, which is eat vegetables, eat unprocessed food, sleep,
move
drink
daily.
water, and move daily. And it's like, okay, yeah, thanks, Peter Tia. So, and literally, Peter Tia is in it. So.
I read cover to cover because if you don't read every single word, then you're a failure because you don't finish the book. So it's very black or white mindset trap.
Wow, Jamie, I'd like to unpack that with you, but we don't have time for that right now, and I'm not your therapist. He also writes about this. I love this opening where he talks about the arrival fallacy.
Yeah,
and it's the idea that like, oh, I'll be happy one day. And I found this on my own journey to financial independence. It was, at first it was like, man, when I'm debt free, just imagine how that's going to feel. Man, that's going to feel so good. And then my wife and I paid off we made our final debt payment. I think we sold our condo and we pocketed like $40,000 from that. And we had about, I don't know, $40,000 of debt or so. The figures are a little bit off here. I made that final payment and I was like, okay, like, is that it? And it's like, yeah, that's it. Like, no, they're not throwing a ticker tape parade for me. We can open up a bottle of champagne, but we got to go pay for it. It was and I was like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't it. Maybe debt freedom was it, but maybe, the first $100,000 of net worth. And then we hit that and it was like, nope, that wasn't it either. It's like, well, what about the first $1 million of net worth? And it's like, nope, we hit that and that wasn't it either. So what's interesting is that so many people never stop and think, oh, maybe it's not a number. Maybe it's not a house. Maybe it's not the second house. Maybe it's not the Ferrari instead of the Porsche. And they just keep going and they just keep trying to find that number where they're finally happy. It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy that you're going to arrive and you're going to be happy. And, like leaving the military, like that was a goal of mine to leave active duty and to do it on my terms. And initially it was like very exciting. And then it kind of hit me it was like, okay, well, like here I am. Now what?
Yeah. So it could be once I get this good duty station, right? I get away from Grand Forks or I get away from Mississippi, then I'll be happy. Or once I get this brand new car, then I'll be happy. Once I get out of the dorms, then I'll be happy. But really the lesson here is you can't anchor yourself to any future happiness. You have to look at what can help make you happy now, which are these types of wealth, your social connections, your connection to a bigger purpose, your community, your mental health, your physical health, and all those things, not a check mark in your net worth goal categories or a new vacation. Like I've fallen victim to that one of, once I get to go to this like really nice hotel, and you kind of get there and like, oh, like this is a nice hotel, but it's not going to make me any happier in the long run. Like I'm happy today, I'm enjoying it, but you can't anchor all of that in the one thing. So
there's this great SNL skit where Adam Sandler is advertising these like Italy tours, these like tours of Italy. And he's like, but I have to warn you, like, if you're sad in America, you're going to be sad here. Like, we can't fix your sadness. Like, and if you're like overweight and drink too much in America, you're going to be overweight and drink too much in Italy. Like, we can't fix that about you. And it's just the idea of like, no matter where you go, there you are. I would say one of the only things that hasn't been an arrival fallacy has been exercise. Not so much like focusing on like okay, when I'm 100, when I lose 20 pounds, then I'll be happy. But more on like, hey, if I get to the gym consistently and I throw some weights around, or I go for a run and then eventually, I run that marathon or whatever, I would say like that's probably some of the only activities not only activities, but one of the activities where there isn't an arrival fallacy. Like, you arrive and you can't keep the satisfaction, but you can feel like the joy of the accomplishment. And it just feels better when you're healthy, fit, you have energy. All the other facets of your life just feel so much better.
Yeah, let me counter that though, because I think some people could also fall into the trap of, when I lose 10 pounds, I'll be happy. Or if I can fit into that dress, or fit back into those jeans, or fit into the mess dress from when I was younger, then I'll be happy. And I totally understand your perspective. The exercise itself versus a goal where I'll be happy when I achieve this is maybe something to watch out for. Spencer, you ready to jump into time wealth? I think there's some really good things here.
One of the first things I want to start with was the question, if I repeated my current typical day for 100 days straight, would my life be better or worse? And I love that, right? Because it like forces you to realize that, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. So if you want to be someone who's, athletic or good looking or wealthy or, have friends, like, you have to take the steps to create that life. Like, if a week goes by and you didn't make it to the gym at all, and there wasn't something else going on in your life, like you were working, 24-hour shifts, look in the mirror, like, you're the problem. Like, the problem is you. That's like a powerful thing right there. But the beauty of that is it brings the control back to you, right? So you can say, okay, like, my typical day right now, if I did this for 100 days straight, like, I don't think I would be in a good position. But if I stop buying the Zyn, if I stop buying the energy drinks, and, I get myself to the gym every other day, man, like, in 100 days, like, yeah, I'll probably be in a really good position. And just having that realization that you have the control, you have the power, you just got to go execute on it.
One of the things in this section that really stood out to me was the energy creating versus energy draining activities, and assessing your calendar. He has a color coding system he mentions. And if you're married, this is a great thing to do with your spouse as well, because there might be things that are energy draining to me that are not to my wife. For example, like she doesn't mind folding laundry, but hates putting it away. She doesn't mind putting away groceries, but hates going to the commissary. Like, I don't mind going to the commissary. I'll walk around with my podcast playing for a little bit. Connecting with friends might be incredibly energy creating for me, or going to the gym or going to play pickleball with a friend or something like that is energy creating. And if you do too many energy draining activities during your day, it's a recipe to have issues with your schedule and your energy levels if everything is draining energy and you're not able to intentionally put things in there that create energy in your life and make you the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I really like that. And that can be really difficult in the military.
Yeah.
Because you might look at your calendar and be like, man, everything I do at work is energy draining and I have no control over that. So then I guess it becomes, okay, well, what can you do outside of work that is energy giving? It might be, hey, on like every Sunday, like, we don't schedule anything. Like, we go to church and then there's nothing scheduled for the afternoon, and we just sit around and play on our phones. But just like, maybe that's what you need because you have a stressful week. I think going for like a hike might be a little bit better, but maybe there's like one day a week where you just don't schedule anything.
Yeah, I thought about this from a supervisor perspective, from a, squadron leadership of how do you take the structure of the Air Force in our case and the job progression, moving people around to different teams in the unit. And you have to choose someone to be the executive officer, like all these things that they may not enjoy. But some people do really enjoy being the scheduler or being in charge of readiness or being in charge of training. So how can you find what people do like and empower them with tasks that are good? And then if you can't do that, maybe it's as simple as, hey, I enjoy getting outside during the day. So I took a meeting the other day. I had a new contractor join my team and we were talking through some stuff. I was like, hey, we're going to do a 20-minute walking meeting. And we just went and walked laps around the building. And that brought a little bit of energy into our day just by not sitting at a desk inside, sitting at a chair for more hours of the day. So maybe if you have a small group or you're doing a one-on-one meeting, maybe you can take it outside, take it as a walking meeting instead of getting in the car and driving a couple blocks away to base. Maybe you walk to your next meeting with the person you're going to the meeting with. Something like that could be small ways to get a little bit of energy back into your day.
I think also like on a tactical, practical level, like going to bed early and then getting up early. Like, for a lot of our military listeners, they might be like, yeah, that's what I have to do because I'm in the Marines and we have to show up to work at 6 a.m. or whatever for PT. But for like us Air Force bubbas that might have a little bit, looser schedule, just like getting up early and getting shit done in the morning, that's like the golden hour of opportunity when, before like all the distractions arise. And I don't mean like logging in and checking your work email. Like, no, like do the stuff, get to the gym, go for that run, set up your family for success for the day. Maybe that means like making the kids lunches or something, but that's, use that opportunity to get up early and like get your day going and then just smash it so that by the time you get to work, like you've already gotten the important things out of the way.
I think the last thing on time wealth I want to share is just while we don't have a lot of control over our time in the military, especially in more junior ranks or earlier on in your career, there may be certain aspects of your day that you can control or how your day is scheduled. Maybe someone on your team can cover meetings in a certain period, whereas your peak creativity. And if you are in a role where you need creativity to think on big problems, you're not going to get it if you're sitting in meetings hour after hour after hour. So maybe instead of you as an E5 going to 6 meetings in a row, which unfortunately happens some days in the military, maybe you go to 2 and then you get a 2-hour break and someone else gets a 2-hour break and then goes to 2-hour meetings. Not that you get time off, but you're not in the conference room. I mean, in a different venue where you get some creative time. So there's maybe some ways to do it. And if you're a maintainer out on the flight line for 12 hours turning wrenches, it's really hard to get breaks like that. So we understand that's not a one size fits all and there may not be control possible in all scenarios. When you become a supervisor, then remember what it's like to have no control and find ways to give people breaks. Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Don't know an IRA from a TSP or an SCRA from a CZTE? Fear not, the Military Money Manual, a practical guide to financial freedom, is here to help. In this concise, no-nonsense guide, our very own Spencer Reese, founder of the popular personal finance site, militarymoneymanual.com, offers invaluable tips and tricks to help service members of all ranks, branches, and bank account levels gain financial independence. Along with laying out the fundamentals of building wealth while serving, the book explains how to take maximum advantage of the unique financial perks available only to service members, whether active duty or reserve, officer, or enlisted. These benefits include special tax-deferred savings plans, preferential bank loans, fee waivers on high-end credit cards, and much, much more. Personal finance is not boring or intimidating. With its candid and accessible tone, this book feels like having a beer with a good and financial savvy friend. So pull up a chair, get comfortable, and learn how to make your military money work for you with the Military Money Manual, a practical guide to financial freedom by Spencer Reese.
The Military Money Manual is available on Amazon, Audible, and my website in hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. Podcast listeners are eligible for a special discount by using promo code PODCAST when they purchase the Military Money Manual on shop.militarymoneymanual.com. Okay, Jamie, let's move on to social wealth. So he's got a couple good exercises in this section. One of my favorite is imagining your funeral and thinking about who are the people who are sitting in the front row. Just recognizing like those are your front row people, and when's the last time you invested something in them, and when's the last time you called them, or when's the last time you did something for them, or went on vacation together, whatever it is, just spend time with them. Or it can be even simpler. We're scattered all over the world. Just send them a text message or a WhatsApp, or just call them, check their time zone and just call them. And if they're busy, they're not going to pick up. And if they're not busy, then hey, they'll pick up. And I just love that idea of like thinking about like who's going to be there when it matters most and taking the time to like reinvest in those people.
I saw in the Today Show last week that President Bush calls his best friend every morning to like check in and say good morning. And I was like, I don't know how old he is, 75, maybe 70. I want to call you every morning, Spencer, when we're 70 and just like check in on you and see how you slept last night or something. It's like, that is a perfect example as I'm reading this book of like a strong, deep social connection. That's probably, to be honest, like pretty rare nowadays because like texting has taken over, or, hey, I saw their Reddit post or I saw their Instagram post. That means that we've connected today, when really it isn't there. So I think this is something that our generation and younger has to work really, really hard on.
Cal Newport has this concept of like things that count as connection and things that count as conversation. And he's like, connection is like the text message or, the like on Instagram. It's like acknowledging like, hey, I'm a person and I see the thing that you're doing and like, here you go. But he's like, but humans need conversation. They need the next level up from that. And the only things that count are in person. Like the highest level obviously is like in person. So like going out to lunch with someone, getting a beer with someone, just having a conversation with someone or just spending time with someone. And then like a video call is also okay, but just like a little bit further down. And then a phone call also okay, a little bit further down. But like you need that, like humans need to hear other humans, to see their faces, because so much of our communication is nonverbal. And it does, all the research that's coming out, it doesn't have to be research. Like just think back to like COVID and like how shitty it was to be cut off from people. That's the thing that sticks in my mind is like, if we go into another COVID type of situation where like travel is restricted or whatever, I don't want to be like, dang it, I should have taken that trip or I should have spent time with that person when I had the opportunity. And ultimately that's everything. It's like, we're all going to die, right? So you don't want to get to, whether it's 80 years from now or 8 minutes from now, you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, man, I wish I just picked up the phone and just called that person and talked to them one more time or book that trip and spend time with them that one extra time.
Another great thing in the book on the time well section was a question 20 years from now. This was actually a Reddit post that he mentioned, but 20 years from now, the only people who remember that you worked late are your kids. And in the military, sometimes that can be a really hard challenge because your boss might be incredibly demanding. You might have a lot of peer pressure. Your annual fit rep or a performance report is coming up. And so you have a lot of pressure to do your best. In reality, who's going to remember that all your font size on your PowerPoint slides was consistent and it was like a flawless thing with no typos? I see it all the time. And I think there's a lot of self-induced pressure to do really well. I think there's some organizational pressure as well, but a lot of it is either peer or self-induced pressure to put in the long hours and put in extra, at least in my perspective and in my foxhole that I'm in. And I totally understand that some people's bosses might be more demanding. When you can control it though, if you devote all your extra hours to the work and the work's still going to be there, and if you ever forget how important you are to the military, when you take leave, remember the organization still spins. When you PCS, the world still spins and the military does not stop. I have to remind myself, especially in seasons of my life where like the military doesn't rely on Jamie. It doesn't need me. Like I do good work for it. I think I'm valued in my organization and in our service. But if I were to die tomorrow, like God forbid, the world would still go on. And so that helps me kind of take off the pressure of like, I have to be the one to put in 4 extra hours today to solve this problem. And it's a very, very difficult balance in the military for sure.
When I left the squadron that I was in, the last squadron I was in, when I left active duty, I wrote a short letter, just gave it to anybody who wanted a copy of it. One of the bullet points I had on there was, the Air Force doesn't need you. The advantage of U.S. military training is that we are all replaceable cogs in a very large machine. You can take any pilot and any loadmaster from any C-17 squadron, and you can form a crew in about 15 minutes. Never forget, you are replaceable. The Air Force will take everything you give it. At the end of your time in the Air Force, if you have sacrificed your family, your mental or physical health, or your wealth, you will realize that it wasn't worth it. Man, I could have written this 5 Types of Wealth book.
Well, I'm super motivated right now.
The Air Force will move on and leave you broken in more ways than one. Know when you're done, when your family is done, know your limit and separate or retire one day before you reach that limit. Your time in the Air Force will end one day. Don't sacrifice the most important people or other facets of your life for the cause. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Man, he even quoted Jesus there.
So that brings up this question of relationship conversations. Like right now, you come to me with a problem like your feelings on the Air Force. And he had this idea of saying, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged? I think right now you might want all 3. I did try this on my 9-year-old kid. It did not work very well when she was throwing a fit. So I do not recommend in the middle of a temper tantrum. But the concept of when someone comes to you with a venting, or do they want actual help, which normally in a stereotypical the man in the relationship is like, here's how to fix this. Like 1, 2, 3, problem solved.
Yep.
Sometimes your wife might just want to be heard in a stereotypical relationship, or they might just want to be hugged. And that's a really nice way, even between friends, doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, just to understand what kind of support you can give for your social network and your social health.
I like the social wealth category, Jamie. I feel like after I was going through a lot of the exercises, I was like, man, I feel so lucky that I have so many people that I could call, at 2 a.m. and they would help me. And, that's a lot of that's because of my time in the military, right? Like you do cool things with interesting people and dangerous places. And yeah, it forms a really special connection. So mental wealth is his next category. He has 3 pillars: purpose, growth, and space. He talks a lot about like defining your purpose. I really struggle with this actually. I've done a couple of these exercises, but it can be kind of hard, I think, to like pin down like, what is your purpose and what is, I mean, there's a lot of like values I have. There's a lot of like things that I aspire to. And there's a lot of purpose and meaning I find in my work, with the Military Money Manual, doing this podcast with you, writing the book, my military money mentor. You can look at that at militarymoneymanual.com/mentor. I'll meet with you for an hour and talk about energy creating activities. That's a huge energy creating activity for me. I guess maybe like the optimizer in me wants like that, that very defined, like one sentence, like purpose and meaning thing. Like, this is our mission statement. This is our vision statement. It's hard to do. And so like, just kind of be flexible with it and, make sure that you're prioritizing the people and things that you need to prioritize. And then just, kind of be happy with that. If you can't come up with like Sahil's one is to create positive ripples in the world through my writing and content, businesses and relationships, which is like, that's great. I'm glad that he's developed that. Like, where's his family in there? Like, I guess relationships, but I don't know. What do you think, Jamie? Do you have a vision and mission statement for yourself?
I don't know, not clearly defined. I think I have some thoughts, and I think that like my faith background would be kind of like an anchor to some of that. But I think like loving people and helping people and guiding people, teaching people and showing them compassion and love would be like some of the themes that would probably be in there, but I've not defined it. I do like in here though, that he talks about in the growth pillar of how when you're trying to learn something new, to teach it to someone else and then take note of their questions and things like that, because both of us being instructors for many years in the military, teaching is very challenging, especially when you have a difficult student or to do it well. It's very, very hard to teach well. Well, you wouldn't know about that. It's really powerful if one of our listeners is really big on the nerdy side of personal finance and they're trying to talk to their spouse about why they should invest in the TSP. Try explaining to them the average stock market returns or what VTI actually is, or why you're using 10% math for annual rate of return. And if you can't explain it, then go back and do more research, dive deeper into it and try in another angle or something. But when you think you know something, when you teach it, your flaws and your gaps in knowledge are often revealed.
Absolutely. That was something that I picked up as a C-17 instructor. It was that I didn't know something until I was able to teach it. And it's something that I've also learned in the personal finance space. Yeah. That if I like a lot of time, like I read a lot in the personal finance space, blogs and listen to a lot of podcasts. A lot of times I'll like hear something and be like, yep, I get that, right? And then someone will ask me a question and be like, oh, I just listened to a 2-hour podcast about that. And I can't like express exactly what I'm trying to say. Give me a minute. Let me like go research it a little bit more and understand it a little bit more fully. And I think it's, like you said, Jamie, it very quickly shows gaps in your knowledge. And you might think you know something, but until you try to teach somebody that thing, I don't think you can really understand it. I think that's one of the greatest things actually about like having this podcast and having the website and the book and the credit cards course is it's like, okay, I need to take these like relatively complex topics and be able to distill them and give them to someone based on like first principles. Like, why do we invest in the US stock market? Whoa, okay. Like, where do you want to start? Like, do you know what a stock is? Like, do you know what a company is? Do you know what dividends are? Like, and then and that's a crazy thing, right? Is like, you can start with just like the smallest thing, like, hey, you should open up a Roth IRA. And like that one sentence contains so much information behind it that you could you could literally spend days just explaining to someone why they should open up a Roth IRA. But at some point, I think you just kind of like find people that you trust. And then if they tell you to go do something, then yeah, you can do like a little bit of research on your own. But it's kind of like Amazon, right? Like if I'm going to buy something on Amazon, if I see something that's got like 4.8 stars, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to buy that thing. Like I don't have time to do more research on this.
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit about the creativity time and having a space in your day where if you know your brain is most effective. I think the author, he mentioned like 5 to 7 a.m. or 6 to 8 a.m., something like that, is where he gets all of his writing and creative time. In the military, you might not have that window. Maybe it's your lunch break. Maybe it is during your PT in the morning, your jog, or at the gym or whatever. One of the things that stuck out to me, though, is about how space can also be creating the stillness and solitude to think, reset, and wrestle with questions and recharge. I'm guilty of going for a run or a walk in the morning and like automatically putting in headphones and listening to a podcast. So my brain doesn't have that time to relax and digest what it's doing because it's constantly getting data in. And so I tried it this morning. I went for a walk without headphones and it was kind of weird, but I'm going to keep working on that. But it could be just in the car. Maybe you don't listen to a podcast or you don't listen to music. Maybe it's while you're in the sauna, you just meditate or just try to focus on your breathing or something, just where you're not always constantly doing or outputting something or taking something in your brain. Allow your brain to reset and have that space to increase your mental wealth.
When I was writing the military money manual, one of the things that helped me get a lot of work done was go to and stay in a hotel. My wife and I, we were living in Hawaii, and we booked 3 nights at a like really quiet, relaxing hotel, not like a Waikiki crazy beachfront place. We flew there, and yeah, like I just worked I would get up, do some like exercises, go get breakfast, and then I'd work until lunch. So that'd be like 3 or 4 hours of like straight dedicated work, no distractions, just on the book. And I think that's what it takes. Cal Newport has this concept of like deep work. And if you look at like what you actually, especially in the military, if you like look at what you actually do day to day, like how much of it, like when's the last time you were able to spend like 3 to 4 hours on a single project without an interruption?
Cube farms all over the place, people walking by your desk and wanting to talk.
So, you're lucky to just like get through your email in a day. So I think, yeah, this idea of like creating space to, wrestle with questions, to recharge, to do deep work. Actually, when I was reading this book, we did a very similar thing where we went and we stayed at a hotel, a resort locally, and I brought this book with me and I was able to finish this book in the 3 days that we were there. And I was able to take a lot of the questions from the book and like really like think about them and wrestle with them and take down some notes and like bounce ideas off my wife. And I think we have this great opportunity where, we get 30 days of leave in the military every year. And not every time you take leave, you don't have to like go back and see family. You don't have to go on like a great vacation with your kids and spouse. Like maybe you just take a 4-day weekend and you just go stay somewhere, maybe with your partner, and you work on wrestling with some of these like deeper questions that Sahil addresses in the book.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to share on this one before we transition to physical wealth that's connected is, as we talk in a second about morning routine, is when you wake up and you immediately roll over and pick up your phone, your brain is taking that adrenaline and the dopamine in there, and it's not healthy for your brain to have that right away. So maybe one thing to consider for your morning routine and your physical wealth is to reset your morning routine where you're not ingesting news that's designed to evoke a mental reaction right away. You're not ingesting sorrow from your Facebook feed or anger from your Facebook feed right after you wake up. And instead, with no headphones, you go for a walk, you get the exposure of the morning sunlight and things like that. You have time to yourself before the kids wake up. And that's kind of a great way to start out your day with a reset mentally. You got good sleep, and now you're talking about movement, nutrition, and recovery, the 3 pillars of physical wealth in the book, and you're starting right away with movement and the space from the mental side.
Yeah. He's got one thing in this physical wealth thing that I haven't been able to do yet because I wake up very slowly, but he had this little plan. I can't remember what he calls it, like 5-5-5-30 or something. And it's like 5 push-ups, 5 squats, 30-second plank. And I do it sometime during the day. Occasionally, like if I'm cooking, I'm like waiting for the microwave to finish or whatever I'm cooking to finish. But I did really like it because it does like, it gets the blood flowing, it gets the blood pumping, and it just kind of gives you that like, obviously it's not going to make you super strong, but it just kind of like energizes you and it wakes you up after the lethargy of sleeping. So it's interesting how, at least in the Air Force, like we don't really have a huge physical fitness culture, right? Like a lot of, once you get out of like the basic training environment or for the academy or ROTC officers, like, I don't know what they call it now, field training environments, but a lot of it is just like, hey, go work out on your own, like go do your own thing. And there's not a lot of like squadron led or unit led exercising. And so it's kind of like, you got to figure it out on your own. Whereas in other branches, it's like they're doing everything they can to stop showing up to
5 days a week at 06
physical training. Yeah, exactly. So I guess what I'm saying with all that is like, you might find that your branch is pushing you in a direction of like physical movement that doesn't really appeal to you. But I guess all I'm saying is like, show up, do it, but then don't use that as an excuse to like, if you want to, go do yoga on the weekends, or if you want to go hiking, or if you want to do a specific type of resistance training that your branch isn't doing. There's so many opportunities in the military. Like that is one thing that the military does very well is, like when I was training for a triathlon at Hickam in Hawaii, we had a 25-meter pool, or 25 yards, I can't remember the exact distance, that I could swim in. There was awesome running trails, and then there were tons of roads. Some of them were very lightly used that were great for bike riding. So right there, like, that's not a traditional discipline that, military service members train for, but the military does provide that environment where you can explore lots of different physical training regimes.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Hey, Spencer, I've heard about this free Amex Platinum card for military service members. Where can I go to learn more about this?
Great question, Jamie. I've got the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's a 100% free email-based course, and I explain exactly how to verify your eligibility for credit card annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA, and the Service Members Civil Relief Act, or SCRA. The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is a beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee-waived credit card while you or your spouse serves in the U.S. military. There's no spam, no fluff, and the only emails you'll get from me are related to military credit cards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and there's zero cost to you to sign up. You can sign up right now for free at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. Again, militarymoneymanual.com/Uniform Mike Charlie 3.
And now back to the show. I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on sleep, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep in a dark, quiet, cool environment, trying to maintain a consistent schedule, getting morning sunlight exposure. I wear a Garmin watch, so I have pretty good data, just under 8 hours, so 750, 755, right around there for average sleep for years. And there'll be seasons where it gets a little bit worse, but for the most part, I'm pretty good with that. The nutrition, where it's primarily eat whole, unprocessed foods, was my weakest area in the assessment in the book. And all of this is like, it's not about becoming an athlete. He says it's about daily body movement through cardio, resistance training, and flexibility, and making it a sustainable model where you have the joint health, the flexibility, and the strength to be able to stand up, get out of bed and put your socks on as you age. So each of these pillars is important under the physical well, the movement, nutrition, and recovery. And it's just about consistency, doing a little bit each day. And you don't need to be out there being America's Next Top Model or, some kind of Instagram bodybuilder. Very few people like that exist in the military, especially in our world, in the Air Force. But there's a lot here. And I think the lesson that I would like to leave on the physical wealth, is that this is one of the things you take with you in addition to your mental and social wealth. You take this with you when you leave. So the military is going to beat down your body. Your knees are going to be shot. Your back's going to be shot. Your shoulder might be shot, whatever. But how you treat your body with what you can control is going to be something that's going to affect your life for decades to come after separating. So do what you can to take care of your physical wealth while you're in.
Yeah, exactly. Do what you can. If you're injured, go see a doc, get it recorded. But like more importantly, like maybe the Army and Marines need to hear this more, but like don't do stupid shit that gets you injured. And, sometimes you're like, well, my job is to jump out of an airplane. So it's like, okay, well, I can't really help you there. I guess like that's your whole job is to sacrifice your needs for the greater good.
Thank you for your service, so I don't have to do it.
Yeah, thank you for exactly. One thing that I'm amazed with, Jamie, is how many wealthy people I meet, and I'm talking about like $10 million, $50 million. I don't know if I've ever met a billionaire. I'm trying to think face to face, but you can Google what billionaires look like, and how many of them are overweight. And it's just insane. It just demonstrates to me that like there are no, other than, Ozempic and the GLP-1 agonists, but like you can't buy six-pack abs, right? Like if you could, then the billionaires would just do it. But no, like the only way to have a strong, healthy body is to move and to do exercises. Like you have to do the thing. You can't buy the thing. So to me, that's actually very refreshing, because it's like, man, you could be super wealthy in this one category and basically be the envy of multimillionaires and billionaires who wish that they could be as wealthy in the physical wealth category as you are. And I guess that's another thing that like when I was on my journey to financial independence, I started prioritizing physical wealth, but I could have done it even earlier. I always kick myself. Like when I was in university and I had access to like a world-class gym, there was an app that got me into weightlifting, was called Strong Lifts. It was like $5 or $10 or something. And it's super simple. It just goes through like how to bench press, how to deadlift, how to squat, right? And it took me until I was like in my mid-20s before I finally downloaded the app and like figured out how to do it. And I loved it. I found that like moving heavy weights in the gym, it was like, man, this is a lot of fun. I always thought it was like a jock thing to do, right? And I was a nerd, so I didn't do jock things. But I realized that like, no, like nerds can do this too, man. Like I just kick myself that I didn't prioritize that when I had the opportunity. Like I had the time wealth and I had a much younger body. What could have my deadlift max been if I had like started when I was, in my early 20s instead of my mid 20s? But I want it printed on my tombstone, by the way.
Well, you probably would have been much healthier if you could have achieved that deadlift max for sure. No, wait, I'm just kidding. Spencer, it's been a minute since we've had an episode over an hour and we haven't even talked about financial wealth yet. So we should probably get to that.
I think every other episode is about financial wealth, but no, I do think you're right. He does address, and I like his concept here about, he has 3 pillars of financial wealth. So that's income generation, expense management, and long-term investment. And I think that's great. It's just like, it's very similar to Personal Finance Club, Jeremy Schneider, right? With, spend less than you earn and invest the difference early and often. Like, it's so funny how you read all these personal finance books. We're all saying the same thing. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. But he does say, like, the worthiness of your life is not established by the numbers on your bank or brokerage statement, and it never will be. Jamie, as an optimizer, ouch, like, that hurts a little bit. What am I if I don't have my net worth? Again, you're not my therapist, but that's a great question to unpack.
Here's another good one, Spencer, is defining your enough life. Like, how do you define that, your ideal life, what it looks like, and then building wealth to that point, and then stopping? I know that's a big challenge for a lot of people on the other side of financial independence. In our family, like well past Coast Fire, like we could be at a certain future expense level, but not where I want to be able to spend one day yet. We're close, but when is it enough and how do you know? Because we have this arrival fallacy we talked about earlier of like, I'll be happy when I get there. And then you get there and you're like, it's not enough yet.
So I did the exercise. I was like, what does my enough life look like? And it's kind of crazy because I wonder if once I had paid off my student loans and we started just throwing money into our retirement accounts and really building up that gap between what we were earning, what I was earning as an active duty officer, and what we were spending, I probably would have defined at many points of time in my life, like, I have enough. This is enough. And I think it's really important for military service members to think about like what your enough life is, because I think for a lot of military service members, once they leave the military, they're getting VA disability pay, they're getting a military retirement. This is assuming that they, worked for 20 years. They probably have retirement savings to the point where they might be coast-fi once they can access those funds after age 59 and a half, but they might realize that I don't have to go get a full-time job. I could go get a part-time job, or I could, maybe only work 3 days a week, or maybe I could start my own business and just consult and like take on the projects that I want to take on, and just make sure that my time wealth, make sure that my physical wealth, my mental wealth, my social wealth, all the other factors of my wealthy life are higher, and I don't have to keep prioritizing my financial wealth category of my life.
Yeah, there's a lot of goodness in here for sure. And this book does a really good job of breaking down how it's not all about one category and you can't prioritize one or the other. And what I'd really encourage you, listener, to think about here is that this quote is really powerful. Your entire life can change in 1 year, not 10, not 5, not 3, 1. And in reality, it could be even less than that. It might be months. If you start hitting the gym now, I've seen this, I think on Instagram, like in 30 days, you'll notice, in 3 months, your spouse will notice, in 6 months, other people notice, something along those lines. But in a year or less, your life could look totally different. And it starts with simple steps throughout the 5 types of wealth to make your life healthier in all the different facets of your wealth. So where you're not over prioritizing your spreadsheets, you're not over prioritizing your social and neglecting your long-term earning potential. There's so much goodness built into this book.
I'll just share 2 more things, Jamie, and then we'll wrap up. But one of them was creating anti-goals. So I really like this concept of like, once you define like what your goals are for each category of wealth, also make sure you go and define what you don't want to happen, right? So you might say, I want to be time wealthy and have a lot of control of my time. But an anti-goal might be, I don't want to like say no to opportunities that might take away a little bit of my time control, but are very interesting or very cool opportunities that I want to be involved in. So creating the anti-goals, I think that was a really cool concept that I took away from the book. And then, I've got 2 more. He says, never think twice about investments in yourself: books, courses, education, fitness, networking events, quality food, mental health, and personal development, and sleep. I think this is something that a lot of military service members, especially if they're optimizers, especially if they're like, man, I got to crank up the savings rate. They're just focused on that bumping up that net worth. It's like, okay, but like make sure that the life that you've created is enjoyable. Like, don't be miserable. Like, if you're sleeping on the same mattress that you've had since you were a kid, like, it's time to upgrade your mattress. And especially now that mattresses are so cheap. So that's really important there. And then the final concept, Jamie, that I'll leave the listener with is the life razor concept. So I love this idea of like, one of the examples he gives is a young father who's like, I show up to my son's baseball games. When he's presented with like an opportunity at work, like let's say it's a promotion, but it's going to require more travel. This isn't totally relevant to the military because a lot of times we don't get to pick our jobs, but it might be like, maybe there's an assignment that you want to apply for, but it's going to require more travel. And there's another assignment that will mean that you're home all the time. If you look at that and you say, okay, what would the kind of father who shows up to his son's baseball games, which assignment would he choose? Well, he'd choose the assignment where you're home all the time. It makes the choice, a lot easier. Now you might say, guess what, Timmy, I want to take this other job because it's a lot cooler and I want to travel. And that's fine. But, just update your life razor at that point to say, I'm the type of father who doesn't show up to his son's baseball games. And that's fine if that's the kind of person that you want to be. So I thought about this, Jamie, and I actually did come up with one for myself. And it was, I show up for family and friends when they need it most. And so if I can live that phrase, and when someone invites me to something or someone asks me to do something, I can think back on that phrase and be like, okay, what would someone who shows up for their family and friends when they need it most, what would that person do? And it just really helps, I think, clarify things.
Yeah, that's really good. A lot of good insights there. Like I said, thanks for the listener for diving in with us for an hour as we digest this, the 5 Types of Wealth, the book. We hope that it's impactful for you and it helps improve your life in the military as a spouse, as a service member, as a family member, as a veteran, retiree. because we care about your health. And it's not just your money that we care about here. It's not just your physical, how much you can bench or how many RDLs you can do, but it all goes together. And if you neglect one of the areas, then it's not as fruitful as your life can be when you focus on all 5 types of wealth that we've outlined here today.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.